All right, this is a video of failures. So bad that the end of this video is actually video of video because I had problems uploading the last videos. So try to stick through it, and thanks for watching. Hey, welcome back to Russ Torter Garage and the $5,000 budget build 56 Chevy pickup. You know, I was thinking about it. This is pretty exciting. It's actually going to be like a get in and drive it truck very soon. I was looking at my punch list of what's left. It's, you know, you break it down into smaller projects, it's getting there. But this one's going to be a little bit of a pain. So the last video with the Radiator, the original Radiator, I obviously had problems. That was going to be an issue for the lower radiator hose. And if I could TIG weld, I would have just put like a curve on it, and if I had aluminum tubing, which I don't, and make that work. But I think this will be better anyway. I'm going to go with I don't want to say a modern style cross-flow radiator. And because I'm also putting an AC condenser up there and a transmission cooler, it doesn't sound like much, but for this truck, that's a lot of stuff in a small space. There's not a whole lot of depth here. Obviously, the radiator's got to go in between the fan and the radiator support. I have about 4.5 inches. So if I go up to a 1/2 inch from the fan, I got 4 inches of slack. That may be enough to get both the condenser and the radiator in there. If not, condenser has to go on this side, and there's very little room room between the grill and that radiator support with these cross braces. So, playing around with it, I'll show you what I got and what I think I'm going to do. So here are the new items. That's the radiator I'm going to use. It is 29 inches wide overall, and I think it was 19 high. Oh man, I should memorize these things, but I didn't. And I bought a AC condenser, universal style, obviously. That was, you know what? I got to get the tape measure. Hang on. Just in case this actually works and you want to do something similar. So the condenser, see now originally I didn't take into account that extra piece there. This thing is from side to side 24 inches wide, which is what I wanted. But then they've got this expansion tank on the side, which makes it wider. So add an 1.5 inches. So what are we, 25.5 is it now? If I could get it to hook on there. Yeah, you're talking 25.25, probably overall width. Still gonna work, and it's 16 inches high. So we got that. The radiator is, like I said, it is 29 wide. And I think it was 19 high. Yeah, it's like 19.25. So, and that is what I'm going to use. The only thing that's wacky about this, whether it hurts me or not, I don't know. But for some reason, the bottom outlet is angled. I don't know why. This is not an LS swap radiator. These inlets and outlets are regular small block Chevy size, probably what? 1.5 on the top, 1 3/4 on the bottom. So I will be making some adapters to make that stuff work, at least for the bottom. The top, I have found that I can get the LS 1.25 inch hose over the 1.5 inch connection point. So I won't have to do anything there, but the bottom I will need to make an adapter. All right, so looking down at the top here, I think, I don't know, call it 4.5 to the edge of the radiator. So even if the radiator was out 4 inches from that, that'd be okay. 1/2 inch gap to the clutch fan is all right. I can live with that. And that may leave enough room to put the condenser on this side of the radiator support. But what I'm going to do is weld a plate across the bottom of this. I'm going to have to trim these out, and we'll go over that. But I'm going to have to cut the inside brace sections off here, and I'll weld a flat piece all the way across the bottom here that sticks out, I'll say, 4 inches from there, from this spot here, and then set the radiator on it and see how much room I have and then work on mounts and such. If that doesn't work and the condenser won't fit on this side of the radiator support, then I'll put it on this side underneath here. I'm sorry, I'm so close, but on this side under this lip here, and I'll get rid of the cross bracing and this bottom bar, because once I weld that flat piece of steel across the bottom, I don't think that stuff's going to be necessary anymore, and that'll give me a little more room in the front. So it's going to be tight no matter what, but I think we'll get it all to fit. All right, first step of this mess. I have my mounts here for the rad support. I have to cut off the intersection. So I'm just going to slice this here, the whiz wheel, try to drill those spot welds out if I can, and remove those sections. All right, wire brush to bring out the location of the spot welds. All right, so with those inner mount sections cut away, I can fit a 29-inch wide radiator in this easy now, but I need a shelf for it to sit on. So I'm going to weld a flat piece of steel in here, 4 inches deep, and I'm put like a 1/2-inch lip on it sticking up or so, just as a shelf or a, I don't know, what do you want to say, a stop, so the radiator couldn't slide out. And yeah, we'll get a piece of scrap and cut something and get it welded in. Well, I found a piece of scrap as expected, and it actually already had a bend on one side, and that'll work just perfect. I'm going to cut it 27.5. That should fit in between the mounts all right. And let's fit it up, get it cut, and see what it looks like. Well, this first piece that I made, not strong enough. I should have put a piece on the back of it to stiffen it up, and then even after that, I'm like, this is too flimsy. Made a new one out of heavier scrap. I don't know what it was from, some piece of equipment. But yeah, that's plenty beefy. This is strong enough to stand up on its own. The other piece was not. So now, let's just see if this is close to what I want. Look at that. That's gonna work perfect. All right, that is burned in there. What did I do with my wire brush? That's not going anywhere. Oof. Yeah, we got a beefy piece in there now to hold the radiator. That's strong enough that I can get rid of the cross bracing and this lower bar if I want to. For sure, I'm going to get rid of the cross brace. just to get room for the transmission cooler. At least that's how I think it's going to work out. So we'll put this in the truck next, get a fitment check on the radiator and see if the condenser can fit in here with it. And if it can, fantastic. If not, we'll make something else work. But this will definitely work for the radiator. All right, we're back on this thing. It has been, I think, 2 weeks since I started messing with this radiator support. And it's cold out, so I haven't been out here a whole lot. And I got all the fab work done, I think, on the rad support. So I think it's all ready to go back in. In between, I put the Cadillac air cleaner on. I threw up that video because I wanted to do that while the radiator support was off, so I had easy access to the engine. So that worked out fine. But now it's time to put all this stuff together and see if it works like I hope. So in this video, I will hopefully be putting in radiator support, air conditioner condenser, radiator, fan shroud, and I think that's it. Maybe we'll get into radiator hoses. We'll see where I am when we get to that point. But first thing I'm going to put in is the radiator support, and I'll show you the modifications I made. So the radiator support needed the most mods because I went to that 29.25 inch wide, I think it was, radiator. So I had to put that shelf on the bottom of here. And initially I made it 4 inches deep. Well, after mocking everything up, it turned out I could not get my air conditioning condenser on the radiator side of the radiator support. So I ended up narrowing that shelf from 4 inches down to 3 just to get it away from the fan a little bit. And I welded up mounts on the front of the radiator support for the condenser. I'll show you that. I took out the X brace that was in it, left the bottom support tube that's there. We have this guy welded on the bottom here, and that is actually to fit into the fan shroud, which I am using because I am keeping the mechanical fan. That's what I wanted to do, and it worked out. And this was the original Silverado shroud that is now cut down to a much smaller dimension, but I think it's going to work. So I made it 2-piece, so it was 2-piece, but I made it so it's easy removable, and I'll show you how that all goes together. So the bottom piece of the fan shroud just bolts right up to the bottom of the rad support, and that metal piece there is just to keep the air from being blown the wrong way or sucked in the wrong way. So that just mounts right to the bottom like that. So now I can put this thing in, I think for the last time, and show you what it looks like, and we'll go from there. Hours later, as soon as I started doing this, I had to go do something else. So just the way it is. So the radiator support is bolted in, just 2 bolts on the bottom through to the frame, and there's 1, 2 into each fender on each side right now, just holding it together. Quick measurement shows it should be in the right position. You know, I did a quick cross measurement across here and it looks square, but you know, we won't know for sure until the hood goes on and then see if things have to move around. So with that done, the next piece, I'll just drop it in now, is just a piece of 1/4 inch thick rubber that is actually from probably a conveyor belt. When a swap meet I go to every year, there was a guy there selling cutoffs from probably a conveyor belt for like a couple bucks. And every year I'd go buy a bunch of them because they work good. So you never know when you're going to need them. So I have this sits in here on that shelf that I made. So that is something for the radiator to sit on. And at least it's not sitting on metal. All right, next piece is going to be AC condenser. I think I spent the most time trying to figure out how this was going to go. Mostly because this guy here on the side, which is a dryer, I figured that out, which is pretty cool. It makes the plumbing simpler because now I don't have an external dryer, but it is part of the condensers, and you can see you can remove the plug out of the bottom and replace the decusant if you had to. But What stinks about that is this thing is under vacuum right now, or under pressure. Either way, it's sealed. So I can't take the fittings off to mock up hoses, because then you expose the desiccant to atmosphere, which of course you have to do, but I'd rather not have it sitting for weeks, because then it's probably going to be junk. So when I mock up the hoses, I'm going to have to make everything, get it close, and then crack everything loose and make the connections. So the AC is turning out, as usual, to be the biggest pain of the whole system, but I probably spent more time mocking this up than anything else. And what I ended up with is I made these little mounts here on the front of the radiator support that it'll sit on. They're actually in the rubber pieces here from the Silverado, and the bases are just some scrap steel. And then I put insulation foam around the perimeter there so it won't push on and get onto metal. This side it's clear, so it doesn't need it. But over here where the dryer is, I have foam here and I have foam on the top. And this guy just sits here like this, like that. And it would have been nice for this to fit on the other side of the radiator support for space. It just wasn't going to happen. Then I made a couple Z-brackets. Again, I put foam on the one side that's going to touch the condenser. And just a couple bolts. And that'll hold that in place right into the factory threaded holes that were already on the radiator support. See, everything is black. Can't see anything. There. Okay. And that is where the AC condenser is going to live. Next piece is going to be the radiator, which was my biggest problem when I was originally mocking this up. And what I got was an eBay radiator, 29.5 wide, 19, I think, high, $112. That's it, dirt cheap. Now, the only thing with this is, because it's a cheap, just old radiator, it's not an LS swap radiator. Upper mount is 1.5, where the LS is 1.25. That's okay, I can get the hose over that. Now on the bottom, it had a 1 3/4 angled mount, which was not good. So what I did, and that's pretty ugly, but I took an old thermostat housing off of one of the LS's that I didn't use, probably off the Buick, and I cut the nipple off the thermostat housing, and I welded it into the original mount. And it's ugly, but I'm hoping it'll work. Let me explain how that worked out. So, don't have a TIG welder, but I looked on Marketplace and I found a guy selling an Eastwood 175, which comes with an aluminum spool gun. So, all right, take a chance on it, right? I actually bought it. Originally, I bought this, I forgot I even had it. I bought it a couple years ago just for the welding cylinder, because I think I bought the whole system for maybe $350, and a welding cylinder is probably $300 to $400, and I wanted to have a spare for the welders, so I forgot I even had it. But anyway, I looked on YouTube and watched some videos of guys doing it, and figured, what can it be? And that can't be that hard, right? Well, it's very different than regular MIG welding. I hooked it up. First problem I had, it was spitting nothing but beebles. No bead at all, just popping and spitting. And let me show you what it looked like. I had a scrap piece from a Silverado that I kept the upper radiator support top because they're aluminum. How do you like that? That is ugly. Well, first thing I checked was the polarity was wrong on the machine. It should be just like regular MIG. The ground should be the negative and the electrode should be the positive. They had them flipped. As soon as I flipped that around, wow, now we're in business. You can't see it because it's so bad, but it started burning tracks you know, actually welding and not just spitting and making pops. Now, the problem I had with this, and I'm going to have to find out if it's something wrong with the machine or something wrong with me, I could not control the heat. What would happen was when I get the arc voltage set to a spot where it would burn and not spit and it would just make a bead, it was so hot, it was cratering this. This is probably not real thick, maybe a 16th, but it was burning through it. So I wanted to dial back the heat to weld a bead and not have it blow through, and I couldn't do it. As soon as I dialed back the heat from what would work to less, it would start spitting again. So that did not work. So despite the fact of watching the guys on YouTube just weld a bead with these things, I couldn't do it. That machine wouldn't do it. I don't know if it's something wrong with it. I have to figure it out. The other thing that's very different of doing this versus regular MIG welding is it's not really the same. I mean, when you MIG weld, your electrode, you know, makes your electrical arc, and you kind of melt melt the metal together and make a puddle and move along. Well, that's what I saw them doing with this thing, but it wasn't. You keep the stick out so far back that they call it, what they call it, spray transfer welding. The arc is very far back from the nozzle, and you have to do it to see what it's like. But it's almost like spraying metal and making a puddle. It's very different than regular MIG welding. But regardless, I couldn't dial the power down. I just couldn't do it. So what I ended up having to do was kind of like spot welding. I had to just kind of zap and try not to overheat it, and then come back and grind the snot out of it so it didn't look horrible. But it was not easy to doing that, because the other thing is you get burn back. Aluminum wire burns back much easier than steel wire. I went through 3 MIG tips to do that, because 2 times it burned back, and once it burned into the tip's junk. You could not free it up. It just didn't work. So definitely a learning experience. Before I put coolant in this thing, we'll put a pressure tester on it and pressurize the system and see if it holds. Hopefully it does. I have no doubt that it's hot enough that it's burned in there. My concern is it got so hot that you can get thin spots, and I had to go back and add more material to try to build that up. So if it works, it works. It's definitely going to make it much easier to put a radiator hose on the bottom of this thing, so it's going to work no matter what. If it leaks, it comes back out, and I have to do some more work to it. So now with that done, this radiator obviously does not have a transmission cooler in it. Just going to set it in here for now. It's probably going to sit around there. I'll show you what it looks like once we get further along. But it'll be like that. And I also have, same thing, insulation foam on the inside of the radiator support, so where the radiator comes back, it's not on metal. All right, what's next? All right, next is going to be the upper piece here, kind of an upper valance that has the hood latch in it, and I had to make modification here because the condenser is in the front of the radiator support. I had to cut the back of this off. There was this reinforcement here for the latch kind of went back into this area, and that wouldn't clear because of the condenser now. And of course, I didn't figure that out till the very end. I mean, I spent hours doing that condenser, and then I went to put this on. I was like, oh, come on, really? But luckily, that's all it needed was just a little trim, and it does clear now. Put a couple bolts in. And we'll tighten that down. Too far in. Now, the only thing with this is, with this installed, I can't get to my upper condenser fitting. So I'm gonna have to take this back off when I mock up the AC lines, but we can put it in for now and get things assembled. All right, next is this contraption. To bend this up, got holes in it for air to go through the radiator on that side, and has foam tape inside. And all this is a mount for the radiator as well as the shroud. I have these tabs here. So what happens here is this just goes right over the radiator like that. Put a couple screws, bolts, and this guy will hold the radiator. And I just bent that up out of scrap metal as usual. Whatever I had laying around. Painted it out here in the cold, which was too cold to paint, but I sprayed it anyway, just to get it done. That's that. Next will be the top of the fan shroud. Put that piece on, upper piece of shroud, and I made this so that it goes together with the plastic rivets, same as the factory did. So they just go right in the bracket holes. And then the bottom here, the two halves go together with the rivets. That you can't see what I'm doing, but trust me, rivets are going in. And there we go, got a fan shroud. There's a look at the shroud installed, upper mount installed. I know it doesn't look like much, but when you build this stuff, it actually takes quite a bit of time to do these things. So I like it, looks decent. Nothing's gonna move. Everything's got rubber, so it won't get burned up or torn up, I should say, by sitting on metal. Now you can see my lower radiator hose situation now is so much better. So as long as that holds okay, as long as it doesn't leak, that'll be good. And I'm gonna have to notch the shroud a little bit here. I already marked it for the intake air elbow. And this hose will just be like a factory style hose that'll come up and curve around. It'll just have to get shortened, which is fine because I have to put the steam port adapter in anyway. Here's the steam hose. So we'll be attaching that into the upper hose. So next things will be radiator hoses. And there's the lower radiator hose. It literally took 5 minutes. And looking at it now, I may not have even had to modify the radiator. I just would have had to go to a bigger size at that end because it actually fit really easily. That piece of hose there is something I cut out of this, which is a Gates hose, 20919. Really not going to help you unless you do exactly what I did and weld in the smaller nipple there on the end of the hose, because this is not going to fit over that 1 3/4 opening. But it was very easy with that modified, so let's hope it doesn't leak. Okay, let's do the upper radiator hose. What am I going to use? Well, the Silverado upper radiator hose that I already had, we're going to make that smaller. And at the same time, since I know I have to cut the hose and splice it, I'm going to use that splice to be something useful. And we're going to put this guy in there, which is a 34mm inline coupling with an 1/8 inch pipe port on it. They sell these for putting a water temperature sensor in or whatever you want to do in there, but I use them for this. So I put an 1/8 inch pipe to 3/8 90-degree nipple on there and use this as my splice on the hose, and then I can tie my steam line into this. That way I don't modify my water pump, because some people like to put it into the water pump. Nothing wrong with that, but I just look at it like if I blow a water pump somewhere and I need to change it, I don't want to have to be drilling and tapping another water pump. So this way you don't have to. If you're lucky enough to have an LS swap radiator, then you'll probably have a port on the tank that you can tie into. I do not have that. And after using that spool welder there, I'm not going to attempt to put one in. Looking into it, there must be something wrong. I don't know. I was running the machine with a long extension cord. I don't know if that would make a difference or not, but something is not right. Because I watched some more videos today of guys using a spool gun and they're just like burning beads. And I'm like, that didn't work for me. So I still have to look into it. But anyway, I got to hack this hose up. So I'll just do this in sections. First thing, I'm just going to lay it on the shroud here and see what I need. And I can already tell I'm going to need to cut some off of the length going to the water pump. So I'll mark and cut that first. All right, that's cut and that's slid over the water neck. Next thing I'm going to do is just lay this in place here. And the next cut, I'm going to shorten it right around there. After it curves and starts going straight, and I'll go on another inch or so, make a cut there, and then we'll see what that looks like. All right, that piece is cut, laying in place there, and we'll take this one here, the other end of it, and figure out what that needs to do. Now I got to cut the end off of this one as well, because it's going to stick too close to the engine. So this here I've got to trim down a little bit. So I'll just lay it on there, mark that. Now I'll get the next cut. All right, next I'm just going to fit my splice into this side. See what that looks like. Something like that. And then this one, got to cut down. And mark that. Something like that. Cut that one now. All right, now the only thing that's going to be wacky about this is I have to get this 1 1/4 inch hose over this 1 1/2 inch outlet. So put a little spray lube on the radiator here. You're about out. Let's see if we can get this on here. There we go. As long as it's a newer hose, the rubber should fit right over that, no problem. All right, let's see what that looks like. All right, radiator hose for the top, all set. Just got to do a steam line. This guy right here. All right, steam line is in. Nothing special, but it's there. And that is about it for the cooling system, except for the heater, which will be something I've got in mind. That'll be pretty cool. But I think the next thing I'll just have to do for now, I want to pressure test this thing, make sure that doesn't leak. So I think tomorrow we'll block off those heater outlets and pump this thing up and see what happens. All right, it is the next day and it's apart. I forgot my camera this morning, or my phone I use for the camera, so I didn't record, but I have, or had, 2 leaks. I pressurized the system. Had a leak at my thermostat housing. That was because I had taken it off before when I was switching them around. When I put it back on, it didn't seal. Took it apart, the O-rings pretty bad, but I put some Permatex number 2 on it, slapped it back together. We'll see how that works. Second leak was at the lower radiator connection. So I had a leak at the lower radiator hose connection. Couldn't tell if it was the hose that was leaking or my weld. So I'm doing now what I should have done in the first place, and that's I just took some pieces of hose and welded up some block offs quick just to plug them off. And then I'm going to pressurize the system. I've got my Stant radiator pressure or coolant pressure tester set up right here. I use this every time before I put coolant in the system. Normally I do when I remember, just to look for leaks. It's a great tool to have. And I found my leak. It is on my weld, and I think it's right around here. There's a little pinhole you see there, and that right there, I think that's where it is. I'll set the camera up, pressurize it, and I'm pretty sure that's gonna need a little bit more filler. So what I'm gonna do is just spray some soapy water in this area. Start pumping this thing up. And there's the bubbles. There's actually a couple spots here I see. All in the same general area. So 2 places pretty much right in there. That's going to have to get done over. So it looks like here and here. Yeah, that right there might be leaking out of. And there for sure. All right, so I'll take the hose off of here, drag the spool gun back out, and try to hit it a little bit better. Failure. I am not afraid to admit when I just cannot get something to work, and I cannot get this spool gun to work. I cannot get it to do what I want it to do. Where the heat setting has to be in order for it even to make a burn is so hot, it wants to blow right through, and as soon as I back it off, it's a cold weld, and I'm chasing stuff. You want to see ugly? That's ugly. That was just trying to just build up material to try to seal this thing, and I'm just chasing a leak, and I'm like, you know, I'm just wasting my time here. Cut it off. So I now have a stub on the radiator. I am not giving up. It's time for a TIG welder. So, because I need to be able to weld aluminum, I've wanted to for a long time, and this has got to get fixed. I'm not giving up on it. So, now what? Well, here's what. Radiator number 2. And that's what it looks like new before I butchered it. Yep, I bought 2 of them because they were so cheap, and there was actually a discount for buying 2, and I built enough cars, it's worth buying 2, and I just saved myself some downtime. So now I'm going to see if I can get a radiator hose to fit that, and if I can, we'll pressure test again. Hopefully I sealed up the thermostat. Hopefully that works. And hopefully we can get this thing to hold pressure. And I can feel better about that. New lower radiator hose. What I should have done in the first place. And that is a section cut off of this hose, 20854, for my own reference. It'll work for you if you have the same radiator and the engine in the exact same location as me, which is not probably gonna happen, but it's there. I now have pressure on the system. and it is holding. And so that looks like, what do we got here? My fix on the thermostat housing is good. Oh no, no it isn't. I see bubbles down there. Oh yeah. That O-ring is not good. I knew it was not good. I tried to seal it and it did not make it. So that has to get dealt with. This hose looks good. No bubbles on the hose, but that's no good. So that's going to need a new O-ring. I may just have to buy another thermostat housing, or because I think if I take one off another car, I may have the same issue with the O-ring. Oh boy. Let's see what we got laying around. All right, let's see if we can end the failures for the day. Got a new O-ring for the thermostat. Didn't really think I could buy just the O-ring. And I thought about it. It's just a seal, and they did have it. The original one is very flat. It is a square cut seal. Hands are cold. I'm going to take this out of the package and install it, and let's see if we can get moving forward here for once. Okay. 16 pounds on the gauge. Finally, I think we're done. Sprayed all the connection points with soapy water. And I think I'm finally happy. It all looks good. Nothing down there. Right here, I don't care. But it looks okay. I let it sit longer this time. And if it's leaking, it's very, very small. And it's common to have a little bit of an issue with the cap seal. It may not be 100%, but I don't see any problem. I don't see any bubbles at any of my connection points. And as you saw before, if you got a leak, you're going to see it quick. The bubbles will be spraying. Only other thing I can check is the steam vent connection down there, which is buried. I don't see any bubbles in there. Looks all right. So, I think the cooling system is done, other than the heater, which we will get to soon. Wow, okay, so finally, moving forward. That beat me up a lot. A whole lot of time spent messing around with that spool gun. And, you know, it's funny, there's a guy on Marketplace selling a whole bunch of aluminum scraps and steel tubing that I wanted, especially for the steel, because I use it, obviously, in these builds. And days ago, I messaged him, and he finally got back to me. And this morning, I went there and bought all the steel, and I got boxes of aluminum cutouts, little just cut-offs. What do you think I'm going to be doing with that? I'm going to get me a TIG welder and learn how to weld aluminum. And as far as the spool gun, I'm going to try converting that machine back to straight MIG and see if there's something wrong with the rheostat for the temperature control, because either there's something wrong with that heat control or I just suck. Could be I just suck. I don't know. But again, I bought it used on Marketplace. Somebody was selling it for a reason. Don't know why, but whatever. So, whole bunch of things to add to the budget. All right, so here we go. First thing, front end hardware. Well, the front end hardware kit that I bought, I paid $44 for, and it was nothing but a generic GM bag of bolts. Had nothing to do with this 56 Chevy truck. It was just generic. I ended up using maybe 6 or 7 bolts. Most of the front end on this has welded nuts, which I didn't know because the truck was blown apart when I bought it and I really didn't look. So all you needed are the bolts, the body bolts to thread in. And honestly, I have that stuff around. But I used some of the new stuff, but I counted $10 of the cost, which is even that is kind of generous. So whatever. The rest of it's going to get used in all these other builds and stuff I got going on, no doubt. But counting $10, that gets the truck value to $62.42 and out of pocket $29.17. The radiator was $112. That's really a great deal. eBay radiator, I'm still gonna fix that other one, but I'm counting the cost of the second one. $112 brings the truck value to $63.54. Out of pocket $30.29. The steam adapter, the steam vent adapter that's in the up radiator hose, that and the brass fitting, $15. That gets me to $63.69 value. Out of pocket $30.44. Now the original radiator that came with this truck, not going to use it, so I took $50 off of my out of pocket cost. That radiator will be used in the Mater build, which is that other 58 Chevy truck body when I get to that. But I pulled $50 off. If you went to a swap meet, you'd pay $50 for that radiator in a minute. So that doesn't affect the value of the truck, but out of cost goes down to $29.94. Radiator hoses. I put a value of $30 and out of my pocket, I put $5. How can I do that? Well, because I'm a hoarder. One of the swap meets I went to, I can't remember if it was last spring or the spring before, somebody had 3 huge totes of brand new radiator hoses, all just miscellaneous sizes, whatever. And I guess he was like me and did, engine swaps and things, so he kept all those radiator hoses. Well, I bought them all, and I didn't pay more than like $30 or $40 for probably 100 hoses. So I put down value out of my pocket $5. You had to go buy those 2 hoses from the store. They probably cost you $15 a pop. So that brings the truck value to $63.99. Out of pocket $29.99. And then the fan shroud, I put a value of $10. Out of my pocket, nothing. It came with the 2001 donor truck. That gets the truck value to $64.09. Out of pocket still $29.99. $1 away from $3,000. I am keeping track of the air conditioning parts costs. I'm not adding the cost of the condenser into this. It was only $70. But in the end, I will list the value of all the air conditioning parts. And guesstimating right now, I might end up with $200 or $250 in the whole air conditioning system. We'll figure it out in the end, and I'll probably add it into the budget anyway. In the meantime, keep this thing for the wall of shame. I'll leave that out so my buddies can see it. I say, what is that? Well, it's my attempt at spool gun welding. Wait till we do TIG. It's going to be even more fun. Anyway, that is it for now. The cooling system is all done except for a heater. I cannot put fluid in there, obviously, coolant, till I have a heater. And I've been bouncing back and forth on that, and I think I have something really cool that's going to go in. It's not going to be just your usual slap something in there. We're going to do something custom. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for following along. Hope this video wasn't too long, but I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Later.